Good morning. First of all, thanks to IDSA for having invited me to the 10th IDSA South Asia Conference, and this particular event being focusing on connectivity in South Asia. Well, we have had a very good presentation yesterday, a lot of sharing of information, a lot of insightful observations, and starting from Mr. Rajat Nag, we had the Indian minister share a lot of interesting insights how things have been happening within India. So I will try to skip the portion which already have been said, and I would try to focus sharply on some of the key issues that South Asia faces. And as at the very beginning, the moderator has very correctly observed that it has been more than 30 years SAARC has come into being, but we still are stuck to the legacy of history. And look at how the landscape has changed in South Asia. You have democracy in almost every country. There is democracy in Bhutan, Nepal, Pakistan has had a peaceful transition of power, India is one of the rising Asian giants. With so much positive momentum, I think we hopefully will not be the only region in the world which celebrates 100 years of hostility, because we'll be closely approaching 100 years since we broke off from the British. So our political leadership, although in their own country have matured, as far as regional things are concerned, we are still boiled into two countries, India and Pakistan. So no matter how much we discuss and debate and how much interesting insights we have, that is something we have to at some point ask whether it will be resolved and other countries come on board. But in the meantime, we have no option but to be optimistic. We have one option but to push the boundaries, because too much is at stake here. Just imagine 1.7 billion people in a region which in last one decade has an average growth rate of more than 7%, one of the second fastest growing region in the world. So imagine what kind of wonder would have worked had connectivity and regional integration would have happened. And this is the same region where 40% of the world's poor people live. So there is so much at stake, so much to win, so much to lose by not coming together. So let's start to get the broad perspective out before we go into the technical nitty-gritties, because too many times we have spent time on these nitty-gritties without looking at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is these two countries need to come together one way or the another. Having said that, I'll quickly move on. Who are the main stakeholders in this entire gamut of activities of connectivity? First and foremost, of course, the governments. Our governments or political leaders are the ones who go out, negotiate, sign the agreement, set out the vision, and then they are expected to pursue that vision with missionary zeal. Then we have the policy makers, the bureaucrats, the civil servant, who got in the finer tweaking of rules and regulation, ensuring good governance, transparency. And as was very interestingly mentioned by Mr. Prabir, that even at that level there is a lot of coordination and good cooperation among custom officials in Pakistan and India. And even yesterday when Professor Zaidi was speaking, he did mention a lot of low-hanging fruits of non-technical nature that can come together. So they are important stakeholders. Then of course the private sector and business community, because when we talk about connectivity, ultimately it means more investment, more trade, more opportunities for the private sector. So they are an important stakeholder. Then comes development partner. This is a region which is resource constrained. So we simply do not have the kind of money the Chinese do and others do to pump in and build belts and roads. So we need World Bank, we need Asian Development Bank to finance the infrastructure. And it also helps to have a lot of good studies done by them. One of the outcome has been Sussex, to which I'll get shortly. Last but not the least, civil society, people like us, who take the initiative to bring in stakeholder, do the advocacy, voice it. So our interest lies in seeing this region as a whole grows in tandem with the political aspirations and the economic ambitions the countries hold for each themselves and also collectively. This is something I will not go too much into, because the Director General, Mr. Jayant Prasad, and also Professor Rajat Nag, they had dealt into detail into how we fare compared to other regions. Today, as we continue to be least economically integrated, our inter-regional trade is about 28 billion, which can easily shoot up to 170 billion if we have more connectivity, more than 6 times than what you're being able to do now. Now, coming into the potentials and challenges, I'll primarily focus on the 3 things that's going on. First is the SAARC. We have talked about it, the non-tariff barriers, the poor infrastructure, lack of connectivity, and bureaucratic red tapes which is holding SAARC back. Then SASEC, which was basically led by Asian Development Bank and had transport trade facilitation. And the intention is to have economic corridors across the nations so that there is industrial growth, more high quality jobs, and there is more strengthening of value chain linkages across the region. So SASEC has to certain extent moved ahead. BIMSTEC, the Secretary General himself was here, so I think he has given sufficient insights what he has been doing, what's the way forward. So I'll skip that. Now, transport, maritime, aviation, land. When I say well connected, means relatively well connected. How? If you look at the India part, what has remained true many years ago, hundreds of years ago, is still true. Myanmar offers the best direct and oldest maritime connection route for India to connect to Southeast Asia via Bangladesh. And so far, so long as we develop the infrastructure along the coastal region of Myanmar, this is a good conduit, and there has been a lot of shipping activities among these countries who are in the coastal region. And also there has been transshipment through hub ports that also has happened. Aviation, one thing is very interesting. In the last 10-15 years, on an average per annum, the number of passengers flying within this region has grown quite remarkably, hovering somewhere around 18 to 20%, and the freights also have gone up by 10%. So aviation has been doing better, and if things should take shape as we envisage, Delhi can be a good hub for the regional connectivity of aviation. But the area where we are really stuck is land, where there's still a lot of barrier, lot of issues about security, lot of issues about infrastructure. Let me get into that. Now, when we talk about transport connectivity, currently there are 3 corridors that we're looking into. The SAARC corridor, which negotiations are halted because the summit didn't take place last year. BBN, as we know, Bhutan is still to ratify the motor vehicle agreement, and assuming it happens, that will be a good first step towards getting the regional connectivity on. Then we have the BCM economic corridor. There have been a lot of talks, but so far infrastructure development hasn't really taken off from the ground. Then we have the BIMSTEC transport and logistics plan, study done by ADB, road development in process. Now, some of the existing rail links which has been working well is Moitri Express, Calcutta Dhaka, then Samjhauta Express, Dhaka, that is Delhi Lahore, then the container freight train, Islamabad, Tehran, Istanbul. What are some of the key challenges? Now, infrastructure gap has been a big problem in this part of the world. If you look at the figures, only 32% of the Asian highway network is of class 1 category. Then railway networks have missing links, then gauge mismatch, for which in spite of having one of the largest entrench of railway line, South Asia still have not connected well. Activity, because if countries like India, Pakistan, then Bhutan, Afghanistan, Nepal invest in building inland container terminals or dry ports and connecting them with the railway, that significantly boosts the movement of both people, goods and services across this region. So what is the way forward? First, I mean, when I say this, I mean all, maritime, air, road. Streamlining visa procedures. Visa has been a big issue in this region. I mean, in spite of the fact we have had shared history, we have had the same struggle of fighting the colonial forces, our visa regimens are some of the most difficult in anywhere in the world. And to do that, even at the first level, we can start prioritizing people mobility, like professionals, investors, students. At least they should be given some leeway in terms of visa. Then open sky agreements. When we cannot resolve issues in the land, at least we can have some free air in the sky. And I remember Indian Prime Minister Modi, when he came to Dhaka in 2015, he said, birds, air and skies have no boundaries and borders. In the same spirit, I would say, open up the skies, because you're doing enough security check, people board in. So that should be open. Even if I assume there are a lot of things on the borders, that should not happen in air. Then provision of transit and transit hubs, which is so important and which already has come a number of times in yesterday's discussion, so I will not delve much into that. And whatever a transport network we have, given a resource-constrained countries like in South Asia, we need to have an integration framework so that there is avoidance of overlapping of resources. That is very important because we have BCI and we have BBI. Somewhere there needs to be an integrated framework. Digital. Yesterday, the Honorable Minister, when he was talking about India's some of the recent moves the current government has taken, the region itself, if you look at the numbers, internet penetration is 33%, which makes it second least regional internet connectivity after Africa. Social media penetration 15%. And one of the areas where we can make quick benefits, if we open up the digital payment system, that can open up a lot of trades and services across the countries. And this, in my opinion, is one of the low-hanging fruits. So this is something which is faster to do, cheaper to achieve, and brings a lot of economic dividends because ICT and telecom can generate a lot of employment. There is a lot of, unleashes a lot of young entrepreneurs, and in a way it also helps the government's tax mechanism collect a lot of revenue. So this is something would be a good point to focus on. Coming to energy. Now, total energy consumed by this region collectively is almost 900 million tons of oil equivalent. Currently, there is electricity trade between India, Bangladesh, India, Bhutan, India, Nepal. While on the petroleum products, India and Bangladesh has some trading, so does Bhutan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Yesterday, the DG IDSA, he mentioned, and I tend to agree with him, the importance of feeding into the energy-hungry South Asia in the years to come by having this CASA, Central Asia, South Asia Electricity Transmission Trade Project. This has enormous potential, and this is something we need to push more strongly in a more concerted matter. And another thing, given the nature of investment and the kind of money we are talking about, beyond development partners, we need to have private sector incentives by creating competitive market conditions. We do have world-class oil, gas, petroleum, and energy power producing companies in this part of the world. So we need to create the right conditions for them so that these opportunities can be properly exploited. Even in hydro, even now, Afghanistan has around 20,000 megawatt capacity, Nepal about 85,000. This is a very environment friendly and easy to access source of energy which needs to be exploited. Last not the least, people to people connectivity. It's very interesting that this is a region which has so much commonality in culture, so much shared history, but so little on the ground initiative by the governments to make the people come together. Whatever happens, because people reach out to each other independent of the government, which is good, but the government is supposed to support and activate. And interestingly, one of the very few noteworthy initiative was in South Asia Foundation, which was set up by UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador to increase people to people interaction in the region, and which so far has given 10,000 scholarships for economically and socially disadvantaged students. Then tourism still is only 33% intra-regional tourism, and now that there is so many airlines and you have so much economy affair, this is something that can be boosted much further. So I think I'm pretty much within 15 minutes, if not less. But the whole intent was to make very precise and poignant points so that some of the things which already have been talked about are not repeated. But I look forward to hearing from my fellow panelists. And as I said in the beginning, we have no option but to be optimistic. And these are some of the initiatives through which we try to activate, sensitize our leaders so that things happen on the ground sooner than later. Thank you.